Before beds, how humans slept in the distant past. Long before beds, mattresses, and pillows, humans slept under open skies, in caves, or wherever they could find shelter. Survival shaped how and where they slept. Early humans were nomadic, moving, constantly in search of food and water. When night fell, they used natural materials, grass, leaves, moss, animal skins, to soften the hard ground and insulate against the cold. They chose sleeping spots carefully, seeking caves, overhangs, or tree shelters to protect against wind, rain, and predators. But even with shelter, sleeping was risky. Wild animals roamed nearby, and humans were part of the food chain. That's why sleep was often light and communal. Groups huddled together for warmth and safety, taking turns staying awake to tend the fire or keep watch. Fire was not just a source of heat, but a life-saving tool, keeping predators at bay and signaling security in the dark. In tropical and humid regions, the challenge wasn't cold, but dampness and insects. Here, people developed early hammocks, woven from plant fibers and tied between trees, to stay off the wet ground and away from snakes or biting bugs. As humans shifted to farming and permanent settlements, sleep began to evolve. In ancient Egypt, wooden and stone beds appeared, mostly for the wealthy. Elevated beds kept sleepers away from pests and dirt, while common people still used mats or straw piles on the floor. Beds were functional but simple, wood frames with woven leather or rope surfaces, topped with straw or animal skin cushions. In ancient Greece and Rome, the wealthier classes owned clines, reclining couches used for both sleeping and social gatherings. Poorer families, however, slept on rough bedding, often sharing space with family members or even animals. Privacy was rare. Sleeping was a communal act, not an individual retreat. During the medieval period in Europe, beds became a symbol of wealth and power. Nobles and royalty had grand, carved wooden beds with heavy curtains, feather mattresses, and embroidered linens. These beds offered warmth and a hint of privacy. But most people, farmers, laborers, servants, still slept on rough straw mattresses, shared family pallets, or even just blankets thrown on the floor. Around the world, cultures adapted to local conditions. In Asia, bamboo mats or raised wooden platforms provided cooler sleeping surfaces in hot climates. In Arctic regions, indigenous peoples used beds of animal hides, relying on furs and body heat to survive extreme cold. Pacific Islander cultures wove palm or grass mats for sleeping, prioritizing airflow over softness. What's striking is how practical sleep was across cultures. It wasn't about comfort or luxury. It was about survival, protection, and rest. Sleep was something you fit into the rhythms of nature, shared with others, and adapted to whatever resources you had. Beds as personal sanctuaries, designed for individual comfort, are a relatively modern idea. For most of history, people shared sleep spaces, sometimes with family, sometimes with animals, sometimes even with neighbors. Sleep wasn't a private act. It was part of daily communal life. Even today, echoes of this past survive. In many cultures, co-sleeping between parents and young children remains common. In some regions, people still sleep on woven mats or raised platforms, prioritizing airflow and climate adaptability over thick mattresses. The story of sleep is ultimately a story of adaptation. Humans have always adjusted how they sleep to match their environment, needs, and technology. From soft grass beds in ancient caves to stone platforms in Egypt, From communal pallets in medieval cottages to the plush mattresses of today, sleep has been with us through every step of human history. Tonight, when you sink into your bed, wrapped in pillows and blankets, you are lying at the end of a long line of sleep innovation. The grass and skins are gone, the hammocks and straw piles replaced, but the human need for rest remains the same. We've always needed sleep. We've just found new ways to chase it. The evolution of sleep schedules, segmented and biphasic sleep today. We think of a good night's sleep as 7 or 8 uninterrupted hours. But for most of history, people didn't sleep that way. In medieval Europe, people followed a pattern called segmented sleep, also known as first sleep and second sleep. As the sun set, families would finish their evening meal, say prayers, and go to bed around 8 or 9 p.m. They slept for about 4 hours, then woke up around midnight. This wasn't considered insomnia or a problem. It was a normal, expected part of the night. During this wakeful window, called the watch, people might pray, meditate, reflect on dreams, tend the fire, check on animals, or do small household tasks. Some couples used the time for intimacy, believing the body was most rested and fertile during this middle period. In some cases, people visited neighbors or even ran small errands. After this break, they returned to bed for their second sleep, resting for another 3 or 4 hours until dawn. Doctors, priests, and philosophers of the time referred to segmented sleep as normal. It appeared in medical texts, religious writings, and literature. No one was trying to fix this pattern. It was just how people lived. In other parts of the world, people followed a different rhythm known as biphasic sleep, sleeping twice in a 24-hour period. In Mediterranean countries like Spain, Italy, and Greece, as well as parts of Latin America and the Middle East, people combined a night's sleep with a midday nap known as the siesta. Typically, they slept 5 to 7 hours at night and then rested for 30 minutes to 2 hours after lunch. This pattern wasn't about laziness. It was a smart response to climate. The midday sun was often too intense for physical labor, so people adapted by resting during the hottest hours and resuming activity in the cooler evening. The siesta was also a cultural tradition, a chance to pause, reset, and break up the long day. So, why did these sleep patterns change? The turning point came with artificial lighting and the Industrial Revolution. Before electricity, human schedules were tied to the sun. When it set, darkness pushed people toward bed. But gas lamps, street lights, and later electric lighting extended the evening, shifting bedtimes later. The Industrial Revolution introduced strict work schedules, with factory jobs demanding early start times. Suddenly, there was no time for a midnight break or an afternoon nap. Sleep was compressed into one overnight block. By the late 1800s, medical advice shifted. Experts began promoting 8 hours of continuous sleep as the gold standard. Waking up at night, once normal, was now framed as a problem, a sign of poor health or stress. But is monophasic sleep, one long stretch at night, really the natural way for humans to sleep? Modern researchers are asking this question. Some scientists suggest that waking briefly at night is a normal human tendency, not a disorder. Historical records show that segmented sleep was common and accepted, and that waking during the night doesn't necessarily mean poor sleep quality. Other studies show that napping or biphasic sleep has real benefits. Research links short naps to better memory, improved mood, and reduced stress. Some cultures that still practice siesta traditions report lower rates of heart disease and better mental health. Interestingly, some modern companies are experimenting with nap-friendly policies, offering quiet rooms or nap pods, recognizing that a short rest can boost productivity. What all this reveals is that there's no single right way to sleep. Throughout history, humans have shaped their sleep around their environment, culture, and daily needs. What's considered normal changes over time. So if you find yourself waking up in the middle of the night, it might not be insomnia. It might just be your body remembering an ancient rhythm. And if you feel better after a midday nap, you're not being lazy. You're tapping into a tradition that's thousands of years old. Sleep has never been one size fits all. It has always been a reflection of how humans live, work, and adapt. When alarm clocks replaced roosters for most of human history, people woke up without alarm clocks. Life followed the rhythms of nature. In farming communities, the sun and animals were the morning alarm. Roosters were famously reliable, crowing at first light. Farmers rose with them, starting their day with the dawn. In towns, people depended on other sounds. Church bells marked hours for prayer and work, and town criers or watchmen walked the streets at night, calling out the time and keeping order. Timekeeping was communal. Life moved with natural light, not by personal clocks. Mechanical clocks arrived in Europe by the 14th century, but they were massive, expensive, and public, installed in church towers and town squares. These clocks rang bells for the entire community, but weren't meant for individual wake-up calls. By the 15th century, small mechanical clocks with basic alarm functions appeared in Europe, especially Germany. But they were rare and luxury items, owned by the wealthy. Most people still relied on roosters, bells, or each other. Then came the Industrial Revolution, and with it, a major shift. Factories introduced strict schedules. Workers had to arrive early, often before sunrise, to keep up with machines and production lines. Missing a shift meant losing pay or even a job. But affordable alarm clocks weren't common yet. So cities and towns came up with a creative human solution. The KNOCKER-upper.KNOCKER uppers were paid to wake workers. Armed with long sticks, canes, or bamboo poles, they walked through streets in the early morning, tapping on bedroom windows or knocking on doors. Some used pea shooters, firing dried peas at upper-story windows to rouse sleepers. In working-class neighborhoods, families pooled money to pay a knocker-upper to serve everyone on the street. This odd but effective profession thrived throughout Britain and parts of Europe in the 1800s. Some knocker-uppers became local legends, known for their punctuality and dedication. But even their best efforts couldn't compete with technology. By the late 1800s, alarm clocks entered the scene. Industrial manufacturing made them affordable and widely available. Companies like Westclocks in the U.S. produced mechanical alarm clocks for the growing middle class. People no longer needed a rooster or a knocker-upper. They could now control their own mornings. The alarm clock became a household staple. Wind it up, set the time, and wake up on your own. This was a small but powerful shift. Timekeeping became personal. Schedules no longer depended on the sun, community sounds, or hired helpers. In rural areas, roosters still held their role, but in cities and towns, alarm clocks quickly took over. By the early 20th century, the sound of a ringing bell or buzzer marked the start of the day for millions. Technology didn't stop there. The 20th century brought electric clocks, radio alarms, and digital clocks. By the 21st century, smartphones, smartwatches, and fitness bands took over. Now we wake to custom ringtones, vibrations, sunrise simulation lights, or even sleep tracking apps that choose the perfect time to rouse us. But there's a twist. The same devices that wake us are often the ones disrupting our sleep. Blue light from screens, late-night scrolling, and constant notifications have made it harder for many people to fall asleep and stay asleep. What was once a tool to manage time has become part of the challenge. For thousands of years, humans woke naturally, guided by light, sound, and the pace of the world around them. Now we wake by artificial buzzers and chimes, often inside a bedroom lit by glowing screens. Next time you hit snooze or groan at your alarm, remember, it wasn't so long ago that someone was outside your window, tapping with a stick, or a rooster was crowing in the yard, calling you to start the day. How technology changed our sleep and what we lost as human civilization moved into the modern age. Sleep changed dramatically. For thousands of years, sleep was shaped by nature, sunrise and sunset, the turning of the seasons, the rhythms of community life. But with the rise of technology, artificial light, and the fast pace of industrial society, our sleep patterns transformed. Before electricity, when the sun went down, people slowed down. Families gathered by candlelight or near the hearth. As darkness deepened, the world quieted. Bedtime came naturally, often just a few hours after nightfall. But with the arrival of gas lamps, then electric lighting, cities began to glow at night. Streets were lit, factories ran into the evening, and shops stayed open late. The world no longer slept when the sun did. Electricity changed not only public life, but private life. In homes, bright light pushed bedtimes later. People stayed up, reading, talking, working. Families that once followed natural light patterns now shaped their evenings by the flick of a switch. The Industrial Revolution added another force, the clock. Work was no longer tied to the rise and fall of the sun, but to factory shifts, school schedules, and office hours. Time became fixed, and with it, sleep became compressed. There was no space anymore for segmented sleep or midday naps. The 8-hour continuous sleep block became the new ideal, not because it was more natural, but because it fit the needs of a modern, industrialized world. By the 20th century, sleep was seen through the lens of productivity. Get your 8 hours became a rule, but so did the expectation to maximize the rest of your day. Culture began to glorify busyness. Sleep was no longer just rest. It became a resource to manage, something to optimize. The invention of the dimension of the T. Alarm clock was part of this shift, a personal tool to keep us on schedule, to jolt us awake and send us into the day on time. But soon, more technology followed: radios, televisions, computers, and smartphones. Each one offered new distractions, new reasons to stay awake, new disruptions to our nights. Today, we live in a world flooded with light and noise. Screens glow late into the night, delivering entertainment, news, messages, and endless scrolling. Blue light emitted from these devices tricks the brain, delaying the release of melatonin, the hormone that signals it's time to sleep. And yet, Technology also promises solutions. We now have sleep tracking apps, smartwatches, white noise machines, and guided meditation recordings. We use sleep masks, blackout curtains, memory foam mattresses, and ergonomic pillows, all designed to help us fall asleep faster, sleep deeper, wake up better. We are, in many ways, in a constant battle. Technology keeps us awake, and technology helps us sleep. But perhaps the biggest change is cultural. We live in a time that often treats sleep as a waste of time. The phrase, "I'll sleep when I'm dead," has become a badge of honor in some circles. Hustle culture encourages long hours, side gigs, and 24/7 connectivity. Rest is often seen as weakness, laziness, or something to feel guilty about. Yet, research increasingly shows that poor sleep is linked to health problems, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, depression, anxiety, even impaired memory and decision-making. In trying to squeeze more out of our waking hours, we've robbed ourselves of something essential. Around the world, there's now a growing movement to reclaim sleep. People are rethinking work schedules, limiting screen time, experimenting with naps, and learning from cultures that still respect midday rest. Scientists are revisiting the idea that there's no one-size-fits-all sleep pattern and that our ancestors' segmented or biphasic sleep might hold clues to healthier rhythms. The history of sleep is a story of change, from survival and adaptation to industrialization and modern challenges. But at its core, sleep remains what it's always been, a fundamental biological need, a time when the body repairs, the brain resets, and the soul finds rest. When you lie down tonight, you are part of a long, winding story, one that stretches from the caves of early humans to the bright screens of today's bedrooms. The details have changed, but the need has not. We all still need to rest.